sure. Yep. See, there's the thing.
And I said it's not porn, but, you know, yeah.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello. Good to see you all here.
So,
85.
yeah.
It's been quite a lot of these.
Yep.
E-Devil Shocker.
Indeed.
Oh,
You're coming, sir.
Hello.
Good afternoon. I am a wilderness explorer. Lovely.
Torden DNK, thank you so much for the Twitch Prime.
Yes.
Second month. Be sure to get that Discord access if you haven't already by going to the sub room. So yeah, those of you that don't know, we have a Patreon and Twitch sub only Discord. So if you have Twitch Prime, use that.
You're streaming. I can't give you good content without streaming the shit out of you. Oh, then stream as much as you like. That's lovely. Thank you, Shy.
Yeah, appreciate it, Shy. That was amazing. Hello. Parasite won yet? Wax Casual will reveal the poll results eventually.
Yep,
exactly.
Caleb and Jacob the Chads.
Oh my.
Clank the Cuck. Wow,
what a wonderful name.
But glad you could finally make it to a live stream.
Yeah, exactly. We have a whole lot of people here. So we're going to be talking about a very specific topic that we've talked about, I would say the contrast or kind of the complementing storytelling structure of, and that is discovery-based storytelling. Back long while ago when we finished Hunter x Hunter. I know it's been a while since we finished Hunter x Hunter. But we talked about how the discovery-based storytelling aspects of Hunter x Hunter were something that needed to be applauded and to be recognized and to be kind of shouted from the mountaintops that this is how you do discovery-based storytelling. But there's also another way to do storytelling, which is, I would say, the way most people do their story writing, which is a form of outlining.
Exactly. And outlining is very important, and as amazing as the characters can be in discovery-based stories, there can be issues with discovery-based stories. The most common one is them not finishing, or them not finishing in a satisfying way.
Which is something that I would say that we in the, as getting more and more into the anime community have realized that it is not common really for anime to end. And to end, I would say, conclusively, because anime is in and of itself an advertisement primarily for manga or the original material in whatever form it was.
And some of the best examples of outlining that you can look for in storytelling is when you have those anime originals that ended up just, being absolutely fantastic.
So we're going to be talking a little bit about this whole aspect there. But first, let's do our VIP shout out for Kuhai. Thank you so much for the VIP support.
I think it's Kohai.
Kohai, thank you. Yes, Kohai has been a Patreon supporter of ours for a long time. But recently upgraded to VIP. So thank you so much for your support. Means a lot. Looking forward to seeing you in the VIP movie watches and stuff. That'll be pretty awesome.
Oh yeah.
So
yes, Jad the Mad, that is absolutely true. Plan, then keep planning until perfect, then die without finishing it. That is the other. See, the thing is, outlining and discovery-based storytelling, they form a circle, and if you go too far on the one end, then you kind of come right back around to the same point where it's you don't finish your story.
Exactly.
And that can be kind of a problem. one of the reason why keeping it simple can be so good, because then you can outline and not have it be too much of a problem, because it doesn't take that long, because it's simple.
It's kind of funny how a lot of people don't want to finish their story. And part of the reason why is because I'd say most of the reasons why we as writers like the writing of stories is because we get lost in it. It's our own world that we get to explore. And it just gets better and better the more energy and time and investment you put into it. So eventually you get too attached to the idea of the story and the world of the story more so than even what you've written. Now, that's not always the case, I would say, for those that are, or I'd say it's most of the time not the case for people that actually have written something. See, case in point, someone here that's soon to be a published author
and does
of an amazing story called Battle Lines.
Battle Lines, that's right. And does Battle Lines make great use of outlining? Absolutely. Is the ending for Battle Lines fantastic? Absolutely. Does it hit those, high points throughout the story that that are easiest to have when you have a good outline? Absolutely.
Oh my gosh.
However, the thing is, what we've said before about discovery-based storytelling is very important, in that, like, discovery-based storytelling, that's where you generally get the best character interactions, right? Because you're able to have these people live and breathe as actual people. And that builds up this great rapport with your audience and everything, and with the characters. The thing is that that's just one half of the enchilada. Ideally, you want to also have those crazy, insane, awesome moments that, make people want to just take the book and throw it across the room.
Or read the next chapter, like, immediately.
Exactly.
Hissy Le Snake, thank you so much for the follow. Glad to have you here. One of the things that we'll be talking about primarily, without going too much specifically into anime, is that outlining is one part, I would say one half of the spectrum of story writing, and discovery base is kind of the other half of the spectrum. While most writing incorporates elements of both, there are very few stories out there. And I would say, even in some ways, because Hunter x Hunter is so big, because it's so large of a story, you can't help but find the outlined specific things within it, because there's so much of it to look at. But it's those shorter stories that tend to kind of be extremely on one end of the spectrum.
And even with something like Hunter x Hunter, like we've talked to great length of how amazing it is that of the job that Hunter x Hunter does with discovery-based storytelling, right? But even like thinking back on the Hunter x Hunter as a whole, like my favorite episodes are very much like outline episodes. Now, there was all the discovery-based storytelling that built up the rapport with the characters and kind of the ammunition so that those episodes could happen. But like 131, 135, like those were very much things that it's like, okay, plan ahead of time. We're going to have this happen, right? And it's going to be very much baked into the overarching plot of the story, so that all the things that need to happen in order for that to be possible happen, right? And that's why going just one or the other, even in such an extreme case like Hunter x Hunter, where it does the discovery-based storytelling so well, well, then you're just, you're standing on one leg.
Yeah, basically. And you have to perform this weird balancing act of just figuring out, like,
and you sort of hop around, and that causes you to maybe not get anywhere far, even though it is a very fun journey.
Oh, it's chaotic, to say the least. You end up having fun, because hopefully your outlook in regards to just handling creative life, the creative journey of life in that respect is actually going a bit deeper than I needed to. But one of my most touted, I would say, important things with regards to outlining is this is something at the base level of every outline when it comes to storytelling, is the visualization process. I am an intensely visual person. I do not really care whether or not I can touch it. There's a lot of people that are kinesthetic learners or auditory learners. I'm a visual learner. I need to visualize it. I need to express my thing out there into the ethos, and then actually spend time focusing on it over and over again, and then actually spend time putting it into a format that I can then see my own work and read it back to me in that respect. I need to ingest it over and over and over again. It's kind of like an animal that like chews on its own food over and over and over again, and redigests it, 'cause you get as much as you can out of it. But an outline at the most base level will let you see the entire story and kind of do the meme of the guy who's like, you know, like sees all the stuff on the wall. He's like, it's all connected, yo. Like, look at it. It's all there. And that's something where, for me, it does little benefit for the overall effectiveness of the story, but it's really just, I'd say, a way for me to get jazzed up about the idea of the story being this complete full package,
right? And that's someone was saying that what was it, that I have an outline for my work in progress, but the more I write, the more I diverge from the plan. Even the genre is sliding from young adult fantasy to horror fantasy. Do I redo the outline, or do I keep exploring blind? I would say, and this, you know, this is just my advice to you, you know, given what little I know, but that seems like something where maybe you have an outline ready, but you don't necessarily know the characters as well as you could, so they might end up doing things that you don't want them to do, or that the reasons behind the outline are not, you're not fully decided on. So like there might be things where it's like, okay, this is the outline I want, but the themes that you want don't actually go hand in hand with that outline, right? So then you're wanting to explore different themes, and then it goes into a different genre because you're like, okay, I want to do this, but oh wait, now I need to pull it back to, you know, these points. And you know, that would just end up getting something clunky. So I would not necessarily redo the outline just yet. That may very well be necessary, but I would think about what kind of story you want to write in general, and then make the outline based on that, and make sure you have a solid understanding of your characters, because sometimes you need to rework it, you know. But yeah,
gotcha. Let's answer questions and stuff on topic with the things that we're talking about, so we don't just keep jumping around entirely. That's a good question, but it kind of diverts from what we were specifically talking about, which was the idea of the actual importance of outlining specifically at the base level, and then moving towards more kind of complicated specific things, because that's a hyper specific example of how an outline was something that restricted the person's writing ability, but ended up
because the reason why I think that one actually is very important is because the whole idea of visualization, the whole point of an outline is so that you can get a holistic view of the story, right? So if that's something where you're having trouble with the outline, I would say that's a visualization problem more so than an outline problem necessarily.
So you're not saying that they need to be essentially designing an outline that's more free. It's anything, just be consistent and hold to the outline that you gave originally,
and understand the reasoning behind the outline, because you could totally come up with an outline and it's like, oh wait, no, this actually isn't a good outline, it needs to be reworked.
Yeah, there are such things as a bad outline.
Exactly. Yeah, just like bad writing, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so with regards to looking at the story kind of in the full picture there, someone was bringing up a thing earlier saying that, well, then most long-running shonen would be discovery-based. I actually would say no for the most part. Most long-running shonen, for the most part, at least from my perspective, follow an arc-based structure.
Right, where it's a bunch of smaller outlines that are strung together.
Exactly.
And the general problem with that is that you could say it's discovery-based storytelling in a sense because they don't have an end in sight.
Yep.
But what it really comes across as, to me at least, is that because and usually what I find is that there very much is an outline, like a fairly strict outline within each arc. But the outlines don't have any reason necessarily to be connected, right?
Yep.
And that's where usually like we end up falling off whenever it's a really long story, is that if there isn't an overarching like plan for the story, then what you want at the very least is for that discovery-based aspect for the characters, to see the characters really grow and start doing different things and becoming different people, you know, all of that stuff. And if that's something where it is contained to an arc, then, you know, okay, I might like this one, but what about this one? Where's the growth that happened here in this one, right? That should change it, you know?
Yeah, and while I am totally for the idea of, I got really attached to the haiku characters, I really don't care what story they do. I don't really care what story they do. I just want to see them in different settings. I understand that is the closest thing to what the long-running shonen writer, shonen mangaka basically wants with their characters, is to basically move from that stage into a hey, now they're going to this arc, now they're going to this arc, now they're going to this arc. In order to keep that from becoming stale, repetitive, or I would just say feeling kind of disjointed, there needs to be some element of, I would say, discovery aspect of it, because then, like you were saying, the character writing is consistent throughout, and it doesn't feel rehashed or localized into its one arc where it has actually no grand meaning in the full kind of scale of the story.
So this next point,
I would say, is something that just comes into the whole idea of the visualization and stuff, is that when you're building a story with regards to an outline, you get to like see the whole story before you do any editing. Basically, you're looking at this story and you're basically just kind of putting it out there, and it's finished. An example of this is one time I was really bad at writing stories and actually like finishing them. So what I would do is I would just write this happened, then this happened, then this happened, then this happened. And it was so easy to just kind of ignore the sanity of it and just go, this is a story of things happening in sequence. And the only thing that I just decided was the order and sequencing of events. And then from there, basically realized, okay, there's a story, it's ending. Now I'm going to then go a little bit more in detail into it. And that it ties
the wrinkles and stuff.
Exactly. And that ties back to the visualization aspect, is that I wasn't able to really go back into the details of it until I had this long strung out kind of line of plot event, plot event, plot event, plot event, plot event.
Yep, totally. And the thing is that can like I have trouble too with like writing and going from an outline to a story, and like reworking a story, you know, as you go. That's totally something that needs to happen sometimes. But for an outline, especially if it's an outline that is keeping things focused on things where and this is again why the whole keep it simple stupid thing is so important. Is that when you have an outline and you're having an outline that helps you keep the what of what's going to happen simple, right? So that there's like, okay, like hence the hero's journey, like we need to get the MacGuffin to stop the thing, you know, that's the bad thing, and woohoo, there we go, you know, or we need to get from point A to point B, and along the journey we have this great journey, right? That's one of those things where they get something simple that's then kind of set in stone, right? Escorting, you know, a person from here to there, right? But then what happens along the way might be able to be up in the air, because they're not having the actual conflict of the story be too heavily reliant on the details and the minutia of what happens along the way.
For sure. I would say next one is basically, you mentioned it there, is keep it simple stupid, is basically just keeping things simple is so much easier when you have an outline, because in the same way that you want the freedom to write whatever story you're going to do, too many times we as writers overcomplicate things for the dumbest reasons. Like absolutely way more complicated than things need to be. That's where you go into, I would say, very typical storytelling traps, and I'm very much prone to a lot of them with regards to how I need to give value to a specific scene or conflict by over relying on some kind of exposition that robs a character of some aspect of who they are, in order to provide a mechanism by which we can transition from one plot point to the next.
Or wanting to write Lord of the Rings before, you know, you just like write a chapter.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Again, by the way, Tolkien spent his entire life writing Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
So,
and most great selling writers and stuff do just fine without ever writing something near Tolkien level,
right? Like, and how much of the
critically reviewed writers,
and how much of the rewards of Lord of the Rings and stuff and its success did Tolkien actually get to see?
In some ways, you look at Tolkien and you realize that he was primarily a linguist and a world builder in his mind, but not I mean, he was a writer, absolutely, but in that respect, you could say that those parts of him won out over the novelist or I would say the character writer.
And a lot of his work had to be finished by his family because it wasn't done. And that's with Tolkien.
Yeah,
like
one of the greatest writers of human history. Like, like just pretty crazy to think about. So when you're starting a story, it's okay to have this happened and this happened and this happened. That's your 3 acts of your story. And then to look at those and go, okay, so I think in between the first this happened, then this happened, we can put in another, then this happened. Okay,
sure,
all right. But yeah, like you don't, if you can boil down your story basically into 20 seconds of basically just you talking to someone
or one sentence,
even
like, that's
better.
what you really want to do.
That's what you really want to do.
Because the whole point of the outline is that you have one thing at the top, and then below that you have multiple things, like the 3-act structure or something. Yeah, and then below that you have, you have more things, and then eventually it's like, hey, you've got chapters, and then scenes and everything.
10 words or less, exactly, Cychronia. Yeah.
Yep. Because that's also how we will market it. Because, I mean, as much as a lot of artistics, myself included, didn't like the idea of, like, because I did not like the idea of, like, thinking about, like, oh, how am I going to market this and stuff? It's like, no. I'm going to be artistic. I'm going to make an amazing story, and it's going to be amazing. But people need to actually, like, see this awesome story that you're going to make.
For sure. And one of the things that's kind of helped me with regards to actually being okay with outlining, because I think my own ego tries to drag me into discovery-based storytelling, and then I realize how bad I am at it. But one of the things that makes me, I would say, rein myself and pull myself back in specifically with that is I think about it in the same way as crafting a campaign as a D&D DM. When you're doing this, one of the most wonderful things you can do as a DM is not try and rob your players of the discovery aspect.
Right.
So here's how I look at it. The players are going to discover the story, right? They're going to do the discovery-based storytelling part. So you almost play a little mild schizophrenia with yourself, and you go, okay, I am the outliner. I am going to craft the beats by which this world will run, the rules, okay?
Right.
And then you basically acknowledge that your future self will be the players in this instance, where they do the character interviewing. They do the little interactions, the discovery-based storytelling, if you will, later.
Because
you basically split those and be like, all right, I'm a DM right now.
Right.
How do I outline this specific setting and for world and story and
for those of you familiar with D&D and stuff,
yes,
correct me if I'm wrong, but what you're talking about is not the outline as far as the actual game that the players will be playing,
right?
But you're talking about the outline for the world, and players might change things in the world, but you've got the outline for what the story of the world is,
right?
And then the players, and this is why D&D is so genius, can then do discovery-based storytelling that they make for what the story of the characters is. Because the characters, when you have attachment to the characters, that's what gives the outline meaning, right? If you were to take something like, I don't know, say Lord of the Rings, like, and Lord of the Rings is probably one of the maybe worst examples of this, because the characters are not what carry the story as much as in a lot of other stories. It's like, it's so much the world and the grandiose epicness of it, right? But even then, without characters like Frodo, Sam, Aragorn, Gandalf, Legolas, Gimli, all them, we wouldn't care. We wouldn't care about the fact that, they have to take this thing into the mountain and blow it up, save the world. Like, that's basic.
Yeah.
Right? But it's the fact that we have that, right? That structure that keeps things simple, that makes it so that then, all right, we have these characters, even if the characters aren't necessarily the best part, right? And it can do well.
It's in the same way as in the word outline. The outline being the perimeter. You're drawing a geometric shape. You don't need to fill in the three-dimensional, diagram of the geometric shape. You just need to draw, the outline. And then once you've closed it off, you've basically told yourself, or the players, if you will, that this is where the story will happen. It won't go out here. Now, the DM thing kind of falls apart because you can have players that go so AWOL it breaks your outline.
Right, or you have a DM that's too railroady, and then suddenly it's not collaborative storytelling anymore, and then,
Right, so the metaphor doesn't fully work exactly.
Kind of like, though, how with outlining in story, you have to be able to flex certain things and give on certain things, right? Because, like the person said before, sometimes you have an outline and it's like the characters don't really seem to want to go along with this, and then you might need to change things somewhere.
Yeah. And in the same way that, you know, if you're coming to writing as a medium for your creative expression, you need to set limitations on yourself, because you will not write if you don't do that. Like, this is something that, like, it's not that you won't write, but you won't finish a story. Like, I would say almost ever. There, you probably will at some point, but like, it will take a much longer period of time in order to do it without basically limiting yourself by drawing that. So,
what would you describe as a good outline of a story? Pretty much any Disney movie. Like Disney movies are like the prime example,
especially
of,
the best, mind, especially the best
ones are a prime example in my mind of where, in some cases, in some ways, you could say that the outlining was taken way too far.
Yes,
right?
It was taken probably a bit to the extreme.
Like because they do definitely take it to the extreme, but they still make it work because they have a set storyline. They're keeping things simple, so you know what you're getting. And then in a lot of ways, that gives them more freedom with the characters, because then they basically say, okay, this is what we want to have happen in, you know, as a structure for the story to have the most payoff that it can.
Exactly.
So now, what characters can we make that will fit into that structure? What is a new, you know, permutation of that Disney story that we can tell, right?
We're going to audition basically for the roles that need to be filled in this outline.
Yeah, that's basically what they do, you know, and that's how, you know, Tangled, Frozen, Moana, like
Star Wars.
Yes, Star Wars.
Star Wars and a lot of these stories borrow from the ultimate studied outline of storytelling throughout myth and history, which is the hero's journey.
Right.
And you know, Joseph Campbell and stuff.
And Star Wars is a great example of both of it being able to be used in a very positive way and a negative way, because, like, you know, A New Hope, for instance, that's straight just outline right there, right? Knights of the Old Republic, it's just A New Hope again with one twist, you know. And then, but that's it, right? But they make it work. they have different characters and everything, and it's fantastic. And then you have, you know, things where maybe they do it again, but the characters weren't quite enough for some people for certain reasons, or they decide, hey, let's not do the outline, right? But then they like also try and do the outline in certain cases, and then and it's just this jumbled mess, right?
So in that respect, the outline that's best made, I would say, is the one where you've just finished the basic bits of the outline. The outline goes into more dangerous areas the further detailed you get. And this is something that I would say is just kind of a good thing to bring up, is that no one's story is really that special when you look at it from an outline. You realize that a lot of the impact of a story like Monster, which I would say is very much an outline, even as we're coming up in the end still, we haven't finished it. It's very much an outline.
You could not have made Monster.
You could not have, like
Discovery based. Like
obviously the mangaka of Monster is a god at creating stories. Like,
thank you, Urasawa.
Yes, so good. Yeah. But you look at the overarching story, and it has to be outlined. It has to be. There are so many things moving in tandem with each other that, you know, just couldn't be. I couldn't fathom it being purely or majorly in the majority discovery-based storytelling.
Right.
So when you think about what the overall outline of something like that is, it goes into a very simple story structure. The actual, like, best moments of the story where you look back on it and you go, that's genius, that's the creative stuff there, is when you have like an individual episode that's in and of itself its own little outline thing, but it just kind of is there along a dot of the overall outlined linear story.
Because like when I think about favorite moments that don't seem to fit in an outline but aren't just like, I don't know, a nostalgic moment because of characters that you spent a long time with, you know? What it seems to be is that it will end up being some aspect of the outline that's been basically learned and ingrained so well that it becomes a subconscious effort. So it's this little microcosm of that's able to be inserted into the story, where you take something else and, you know, you make it come full circle or whatever, right? And then you have something there that might not have been, you know, specifically planned in the grand scheme of things, because those things do happen when you're writing. There's a reason the term discovery-based writing exists. But that being said, it's usually, you know, ties back to that whole outline structure. Should we go into some examples like specific examples of it?
We could go into we mentioned an anime original.
Yes.
I think that's a good one to kind of start things off here, because it's probably the most simple example
probably.
of this, and it's something that we've watched entirely.
A Place Further in the Universe.
Yes.
If you haven't watched this anime, it's an anime original made by Madhouse recently. It's absolutely fantastic.
Incredible stuff.
And it is a prime example of an outline-based story that has fantastic characters. The characters are and carry the story, right?
Yep.
So for, if you're thinking that you can't have good characters while having an outline, well, this is basically a way to disprove you. But they take all of the characters and they're like, okay, we'll have the characters. We're going to have the end, the whole conflict of the story, which is let's go somewhere, right? Yep. It's literally just the hero's journey. All that the conflict is going on a journey, right? Yep. And then you have the characters that add their own conflict because they're people. Mm-hmm. And with those characters, they dedicate an episode to each of them to set them up and to introduce them as characters.
It's extremely
And then
mechanical.
they dedicate a second episode to each of them to resolve their main conflict with time in between to foreshadow their conflict. Yeah. It's very structured. Like this is something that was
built. Feels crafted, like someone basically like carved a marble statue out of the block, Yep. It's something to behold and rewatch, because you realize how much of it was mechanically induced, and yet when it's presented, because of the effortlessness of the I would say the ingestion of the story, it you could like miss it. You could miss seeing the structure without repeat viewing.
And if you're not someone who like thinks about it from the standpoint of I want to also like design my own stories, then it's very easy to miss, right? Because it ends up going so smoothly that you forget it's there.
Yeah.
Usually when people will like think about outlining and and that kind of stuff is when it's done badly. Mm-hmm. Like they'll be like, okay, like, assuming that they don't normally think about that kind of stuff, right? Because a bunch of people don't. But with something like, say, The Last Jedi, that was a great example where a bunch of people that probably don't really think about outlines for stories and stuff in general suddenly see something that is off to them and they're like, whoa, hold on.
Yeah.
This isn't how it was supposed to go. Why did you do this? Why did you do this? Why did you do this? Yep. And they pick out a bunch of things that, quite frankly, the execs should have seen and changed, right? And it's like the 5-year-old breaking the systems for the evil genius. The evil genius is like, I have this amazing plan, and it's like, just give it to a classroom of 5-year-olds and then rework it as necessary. Like,
Yeah, some good commentary in here. How do you know if something is discovery based? Don't you need to know the process of the author to say whether it is or not? To say emphatically, you're right. Yeah. We cannot say with 100% certainty that any story is either discovery based or outline based.
The best outline stories feel like discovery based stories.
Yes,
is the thing, right? Yes. And because what you really want to do, like even with like say trilogies, for instance, if you have a trilogy, there's the whole stereotype that the middle one is bad, right? And that's with good reason. Usually it is. And if you have a trilogy, for instance, one of the things that you want to do is you want to basically figure out, how am I going to disguise this so that there's the overarching story, but all the points along the way feel necessary. Right? Yep. You feel like the story could end here. Yep. Red Rising, the book series, is a fantastic example of that. The second book in the trilogy is
the best one.
Is the best one, probably.
At least in our opinion, yeah.
Yeah. And that's something where it had an outline, but it was well, it did some fun things with it. But hiding that aspect of
that's a very good point. That's a very good point in some ways. So if you look at JoJo's, and just in the first 3 parts, because we haven't finished part 4 yet, but looking at the first 3 parts of JoJo's, you can see how the themes, the presentation, and the style of each one was essentially discovered. But each one contains its own very, very specific outline for the beginning and the end. But if you look at the middle, if you look at the middle of, I would say, almost every part of the first three parts of JoJo's, it's actually the weakest part. It's like usually the weaker parts is you'll find a lot of individual little storylines that while they might be outlined themselves, you can tell that they weren't outlined into the overarching main storyline of that part.
And like part one of JoJo's, for instance, right?
Yeah.
That one I would say is the most heavily outlined, and it's also the most criticized, and it's the shortest.
Yeah.
But like if you were to think about it, that's an example where it's like, okay, we have an outline, right? Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, right?
Yep.
3 episodes per. Cool, right?
Yep.
First 3 episodes, very solid. You know, like it does all the things that it wants to do. And even in there, it's a small outline of, episode 1, 2, 3, Act 1, 2, 3, right? And then you have the middle 3 episodes, and it's like, this was clearly just set to be, this is the middle part of the outline, and it's like, okay, what are we going to do here? It's something, and as awesome as Speedwagon is, like, those episodes maybe could have been, yeah.
And then you have the last part of part 1, which was clearly outlined in how it connects back to the first third of part 1. Yeah. There's something really, I would say, special in a story where you can blend aspects of discovery-based storytelling and outline, I would say, outlining the story from the beginning. But one of the things that I would say helps you identify which one it tends towards more, and I think Leary had actually brought this up, is actually how the overarching story progresses in the moment-by-moment, I would say, segments of the story.
Yes.
If we're talking an anime, you look at the episodes. The number, I would say, of episodes that tie back to the overarching plot, where if you removed that episode from the plot, the whole story would fall apart, shows you how, I would say,
it's tough because
it is tough, but there's multiple ways of looking at this.
Like, you could have it be something where it's a discovery based thing, and because that detail was there, then all the rest could happen. Or you could look at it as an outline thing where the person said, okay, this needs to make sense to happen. There we go. Awesome. It's beautiful. With that one addition, it all makes sense. But yes, I think Cyrus mentioned this, but one of the other things you can do is look at the amount of retconning, and that's another example of where it's usually discovery-based storytelling, and then they write themselves kind of into a corner, and they're like, I need a thing to solve a thing. So they're like, okay, I'll make that, right? And depending on the amount of foresight that the person has, or the amount of outlining that they do, like, after the beginning, then they're like, oh, I need a thing. Okay, so then they make something, and then maybe, 10 episodes later or 20 episodes later,
which is why I would definitely say JoJo's individual parts are outlined, but those outlines get tossed away a little bit for the next part of JoJo's.
And you can outline it as much or as little as you want, kind of. I mean, there's consequences to what you do, but all of the individual points, like when you stop outlining, you have to discovery base those through, right? And that's where you can get those great character interactions, even if you're doing a solid outline.
Right. It's also where, in another story that we've talked about for the merits of its discovery-based storytelling, Hunter x Hunter.
Right, exactly.
Actually, where it uses outlining to extremely good effect.
Yes, because, the super high-impact moments, right? Those ones that make people praise Hunter x Hunter from the rooftops. Because, like, if Hunter x Hunter didn't have those high-impact moments, and it was just, like, a story with these great characters, it would be a great story.
Right.
But it wouldn't have the people that are that diehard about it, right? It's those unforgettable moments where you're just like, what was that, right? That is not something that happens by accident.
Yeah, and that's where you find the perfect blending of, in a lot of ways, discovery-based and outlining. Because outlining, when you're primarily being led by the discovery-based thing, is basically saying, like, I, again, take it in from a DM's perspective and stuff, is that, like, I want to give every character that I come across the attention they deserve. I understand that each character is going on their arcs, and these are the characters that I'm going to focus on soon. So I'm going to build to this type of conclusion with a specific type of emphasis, like a specific type of emotional emphasis. You could take Gon, for instance, with the whole build up to the Hisoka fight there. That was something that was planned early
and
on.
Even then,
in the Hunter exam.
And even then, that was something where it that's an example of like a basic outline of
very
this
basic.
is something that I want to have happen at some point. It's something that's opened and then it's closed, right?
Yep.
Whereas with some of the later arcs, like the Chimera Ant arc especially, there's a lot more of that.
Oh,
but
you
can still see those points where it's like, oh wait, I need another thing in here. Welfin, all right, cool. And then he exists. Like those kinds of things. And with something like, say, A Place Within the Universe,
right,
that's something where it's like, oh yeah, it's not adapted from anything, right? With those anime originals, you can really tell it a lot better because like if you're making something week to week, like with a manga or something, or even if it's month to month, yes, balance between outline and discovery-based storytelling, so it's never a clear-cut thing of one or the other usually. But there's only so much outlining you can do when you're making it week to week, right?
Yeah, before you have to actually just start getting the product out there,
right? And that's probably why a lot of the stories that are done in manga format are types of stories that basically work well, and even in like Western television, right? Something that works well with just making something week to week, right? Because then like we criticize Western television for doing this, but like the whole thing of maybe only having like character growth or development or something that's plot relevant every 4 episodes, and each episode's an hour, it's because it's like well, we'll just keep doing this formula, and then while we're doing that, we'll siphon off a bit of our energy to basically think about overarching stuff, and then be like, okay, and then sprinkle that in, right?
Yeah, and as long as it's somewhat internally consistent from the stuff that happens previously, or happened previously, then it feels good overall, and it kind of, I would say, gives you a retroactive fun picture of a character going through consistent growth, even though it was probably some of the very low minimal effort regards to the actual focus the character had in the story. But in terms of actual ability to create that story so much so that the character's growth is realized and actualized in the writing and, seen by the viewer, the audience, that takes effort. That takes some skill. That shouldn't be, understated. So it's pretty interesting. Does the outline refer to the audience or writer's perspective?
I would say it's the
writer's perspective.
I would say it's the writer's perspective, but the thing is, like, because ideally, from the writer's perspective, they want the audience's perspective to be the same in either one.
Yeah.
Right? And yeah, you can have different kinds of stories that you're wanting to make,
For sure.
But either way, you want the overall... The objective in both is to basically make a smooth experience for the audience, right? And the difference is that in the discovery-based storytelling, it's, the end goal isn't so much of the point as the journey, right? Whereas the outline is like, okay, cool, we have things that we want to have happen, we want to hit those high impact moments, so we need to make sure that we seed certain things so that when those high impact moments happen, they feel built up to, right? So yeah, if that answers your question.
And that's where I would say discovery-based storytelling has its biggest problem comparatively to outline-based storytelling is crafting and ending.
Right.
And when I say crafting and ending, I mean like chiseling it like ever so slightly, like basically like doing every like minute detail that it all ties back to the full in some ways I can actually shout this out now, whereas I couldn't before because I've now read the book. Jacob did a very interesting thing in the story where the ending is so paramount, to quote Glass Reflections, his YouTube hero, or one of them at least, that the ending is something that makes you look back at the whole story and realize, oh, you just have this moment of clarity.
Yeah.
You have this moment of, and you really feel like the story intended for this ending to happen.
Right.
There are so many times where we've seen stories basically just kind of get to the ending and you realize that they were running on the formula of a specific outline within the individual stories leading up to the ending, but the overarching story hadn't really been outlined except for the first like 80%. And then you get things like Lost. You get things like,
where it's just over. Like even in a lot of the good cases of those situations where the ending doesn't flub, it's just something where it's like, oh, okay, I guess that's over. All right, now I'm depressed because I'm not getting this hit of this awesome, story that I was consuming.
For sure.
But like with the good outline endings, it's the ba 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 and then it's done.
Totally.
Slam bang finish.
Hey, and Olio 5, that is a very good point. Outline is the framework, the skeleton of the story. A bad outline, in my opinion, is when the audience is able to see the frame, thus breaking immersion.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. If you're
that is why some people are like, oh, Disney, Marvel, I'm not a big fan of those because it's the same movies rehashed over and over again. And on some level, they're right. But it's at the very base level they're seeing that because, in my opinion, because they've watched so many Disney and Marvel movies because they're all actually pretty decently overall good.
Right. Yeah, because that's the thing. Like the people that say that, I get the feeling that they still end up watching a lot of them. And they might get tired of it, and hey, everyone has different
totally
preferences.
Makes sense, yeah.
Oh yes, Monogatari is definitely one that I would say feels outlined like
100%.
Because
100%.
And the thing is, the characters
just having
are
finished
still
Bake
amazing.
alone.
Yeah, just finished Bake, and also Kizu 2 is up on early access. Plug Patreon. And that one, holy crap!
The second Kizu movie is one of, I would say, the best examples of my recent memory of stellar outline-based storytelling.
Yep. And it's all character focused, because that's the thing that's really tough with outlines, is that a lot of the time you might have a cool plot, right? But a cool plot without the characters is hollow, right? It's nothing. So you need to have the characters with that. And Kizu 2 is a fantastic example of, because doing an outline and having it be an outline and having the characters still fit along the way when it's a character-based conflict like battle lines, that's very hard to do, because then as you change certain things, then the whole rest of the story needs to be changed, and you need to rework the entire outline while having there be that slam bang finish at the end, right?
Right.
That feels like everything is building up to this. That's tough. And Kizu 2, holy crap, did it do that? Right down to the three-act structure with multiple things within those 3 acts that is quite formulaic, quite frankly. But the thing is that it's so focused on the characters, it's executed so well that it's what is there to say about it other than, oh my god, that was amazing.
We're not gonna talk about going into reviews and stuff like that. You'll see that in the discussion for the reaction and things like that. There's a lot of things to go through there. But the examples, I would say, that kind of come to our mind whenever we think about what makes a good outline for a story is sometimes when you see, especially in anime, you see these adaptations where they have to take something that is too much and kind of whittle it down to its important, necessary parts for a specific story within that larger story that they're wanting to tell. A very good example of this, in our opinion, is the 1997 anime for Berserk.
Yep.
It is a great, now that we're getting into the manga, it is a great adaptation of a manga that has a lot of other things going on. And they had to cut a decent amount of stuff, especially from the beginning.
They changed quite a bit.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if you look at it, because, the whole... where the Berserk anime ends, that is a very particular thing that even for Miura, when he was writing it, that was definitely an outlined thing, right?
Yeah.
And hence why he put it so far out. And then he's like, okay, cool. I'm going to have this thing happen. All right. Now I'm going to build up to it, right?
Sure.
Which makes something that is fantastic for an anime, because it's basically saying, hey, we're going to take that most outlined chunk of Berserk, right?
Right.
Because a lot of the stuff that we're in Berserk now is discovery-based storytelling.
There's a lot of it.
I mean, I'm sure there's an outline that will sort of be unveiled more as we get into it. But right now, it's very discovery-based storytelling.
Yeah.
So they just let's take that outline chunk. Cool. Let's just make an anime about this. and just have that be it, right? There you go.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. But you can really feel that, I would say, particularly in the Berserk anime, with the build-up not only of the 3 characters' arcs being ones where they took the very important, necessary moments for those, and made sure that they were very much the focus of it on the backdrop of this medieval, fantasy story, and then all crescendoing with the end of the 1997 Berserk anime.
Even though that's not the end of the story as a whole, right? From the standpoint of that anime, it totally works. They built up to it so well, so much. Yeah,
exactly.
And also the whole first episode of Berserk, even though that was something that didn't really exist in the manga, the fact that exists, I would say, is another basically showcase of how important outlining can be, because they basically say, okay, cool, there's this outline here. Now the thing is, since we're cutting it out from the rest of the story, what do we do for the beginning, right? That stuff in the beginning isn't there anymore. So how do we properly set this up? How do we tie a nice red bow around it, right? They're like, okay, let's make a new episode that's at the beginning that will basically just be the introduction and that little bit to whet the appetite of the viewers, right?
Right.
So that they know when that ending happens that, yes, that is the ending that we were building towards the entire time.
That is the plan.
Because if they hadn't had that first episode and then the ending happened, that would have been just like, what?
Yeah, in some ways it does spoil slightly the ending, because you then know that, well, this is the end.
Right, and then it goes from more of like a Greek tragedy thing where it's, you know that this is all doomed to fail, and how is it doomed to fail, and where are the fatal flaws in the heroes and the eventual antagonists that will cause it to happen, right?
Yeah, exactly. On some level, I've heard varying different debates on whether or not that first episode is actually, like, you know, now that I've finished it, like, worth actually the watch for a first-time watcher. And I'm very much on the side of it's very important. It's very important. It sets, I would say, actually a little bit of it basically gives you, it's basically an RPG where you're about to enter a big wide open room and there's a bunch of bandages in a little bit of a box to the side, and you're just like, wait, why am
save?
Like,
it's just like,
the game auto saves and gives you a bunch of med packs, and you're like, wait a minute, hold up a minute, why am I getting all these why am I getting all these things? Am I about to face a big boss? And Berserk is basically like, hey, yeah, we're gonna give you a bunch of med packs that you don't really know you'll need for a while.
You're probably wondering how I got in this situation. Yeah, basically. Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then it does an in media res and makes you wait, but basically forever.
The best thing about that Berserk in media res, is that it keeps it mysterious.
Very mysterious.
The actual details that it gives you are very small.
Yep.
Right? It sets the stage that this is a fantasy of sorts, even while being medieval. Right? And that things aren't going to go well between Guts and Griffith.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
And that Guts ends up alone.
Yeah.
So that's all. Right?
Cool. What is in media res? In media res is basically when you start a story at a future point,
right,
and then you retroactively jump backwards,
go back in time,
and then explain how you got to that point.
Right, exactly.
It's a very, very common storytelling mechanic or device, I would say, up to plot device, I would say, that is used in a lot of television, a lot of
for television it's especially common, which is when it almost like kind of sucks the most.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, you know that you can't have true lasting consequences in television with how it's normally done in the West.
Yep.
So an in media res is just like, oh, yay, they're in some sort of dangerous situation. I wonder how / if they'll get out of it, you know? Yeah.
That would be essentially like how Star Wars did their original trilogy first, and then their prequels. Then later.
Sure, although
it's not.
Although prequels are a different thing from that, because that's where it's like there's separate stories that then tie in together and stuff.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's more of a I would say a unique spin on in media res, by having it all still be tied to the same overarching story of Anakin Skywalker.
Sure, but I would say for in media res, the thing that makes in media res is that you are given something out of context in the future, and then it then immediately goes to explain it. Now, if you do that particular watch order for Star Wars, then it's kind of an in media res.
Yes,
but
the production of that, exactly.
Yeah.
It's also used in a lot of games, mostly MMOs, to show how powerful you can get. I wouldn't have thought about that. That's kind of interesting. I like the idea of that because it's Paradise Lost. It's basically you take the thing that will be your this is what I'm going for, the thing I'm trying to attain via my progression within the game, but then you're robbed of it, and now you have not only an in media res storytelling thing, you have a plot hook for why you want to get it back. Right. I remember playing in Star Wars The Old Republic, the smuggler character who starts off with a ship and every other class doesn't, and you're like, wait,
I start out with
a ship? This is so awesome. And then you realize, oh, like the first mission, it's stolen from you, and you're like, I see what you did there. It's not in media res per se. It's basically a form of, we're going to take away the thing that you will eventually get, but we're also going to break the meta a little bit. The immersion was a little bit broken by saying, this is the thing you're going to get, but you can't actually have it now. We have to have the DM take it away from you.
Even though, like, and I don't know how many of you guys have actually played Star Wars: The Old Republic, but as much as the smuggler story was one of the weaker ones, the fact that they chose to have it be something where it's like, hey, we're going to set up something so that you have a reason to have that be important to you, you know, rather than just, oh, hey, you know what, you're high level now, so let's just throw a ship at you, you know. I liked that as a decision.
There's a lot of people asking about the poll. Just understand that I'm basically looking over the poll right now. Like, I will give you guys the knowledge of who won the poll, but this poll was a test, the recent show poll for replacing Devilman Crybaby, and we still have a week before the last episode is on early access. So it's coming soon. It's coming soon. You won't have to wait too long. So just know I hear you.
We're just so excited. Yeah, we know.
I know you're excited. I know you're excited. But I will. 90% of people here asking about reactions rather than discussing the topic.
It shows what percentage of our viewers are like aspiring writers. But yeah,
it's all good. Yeah. Hey, Frozen Yobert, thank you so much for the Twitch Prime, a new sub, y'all. Well, please welcome Frozen Yobert. And by the way, you have now access to our Patreon and Twitch sub only Discord. So be sure to check out the invite link in the sub room for our Twitch chat here. Yeah, check that out.
Is Inception an outline?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. Whenever, because the way I would say that it's really easy to tell for Inception, right? Even though it's character based, is that they ended with a definitive question to the audience, right? Like, that was very much intentional. And then basically they're like, okay, we're going to take that as a premise, right? The premise of like, okay, if you could manipulate dreams, how would you know what's real, right? Yep. They kind of matrixed it with that, right? And then they're basically like, okay, we're going to make a story that's all about that.
And there's literally an Act 1, Act 2, Act 3 in terms of the levels of the dreams.
yeah. And then
unless it was all a dream, and then it was Act 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Right, exactly. and then we'll end with that question to the audience, right? And people talked about it like crazy. I enjoyed the movie. It wasn't like, like a super mind-blowing like favorite movie of mine, but I really enjoyed it. But the fact that people were able to like have the ending haunt them so much while they would try and sleep or whatever, and they're just like, I can't sleep, it's so good, is because of that well executed outline, right?
Yep.
The reasons why, like, I, for instance, love the Disappearance movie for the Haruhi Suzumiya franchise, is because they did a great thing with an outline there that was, albeit retroactively put in because it was not originally outlined in the actual light novels, the original material, but because the light novels were out of order and stuff, and because of things like that, they're like, you know what? We can retroactively put in all the stuff to make it be outlined, and you just, won't know it's there until you see the movie.
Totally. March Comes In Like a Lion has a special structure of storytelling. It is like all characters have their own branches of narrative, which goes out on their own and crosses with other storylines, and some don't. It's like the author wants to show that all characters are living their lives, and we just see things from Rey's perspective for the most part. So we don't see what the other characters are doing, even though they're still developing, living their life. I would say this is actually broken more recently with what they've been doing with Shimada. Shimada became a perspective character for a good chunk of the latter part of season 1. So while Rey is primarily the perspective character, there are parts where they go specifically with Shimada to his perspective, to the point where it is something where everyone is living their lives, and it is how they interact with Rey, and in the same way that a first person written narrative would generally be, in that you have that limited perspective because it is primarily a first person with a lot of internal thoughts from Rey and stuff, but not really going into other people's thoughts, except for Shimada. That was what really surprised me, I would say, about the first season.
And I would say that March Comes in Like a Lion is definitely discovery based.
Yeah.
And the thing is that, and this is kind of its blessing and its curse, because there is no definitive end in sight for March. Right? Like, what would it be? Because the thing is it's about
his health and
it's about his health and him learning to live life, right?
Yep.
That's like by its very nature something that is supposed to just go on for as long as it needs, right?
Yep.
So discovery-based storytelling. That makes it absolutely fantastic, because what they do with the characters is wonderful and so good.
Yep.
However, at the same time, like, I don't know how popular March Comes in Like a Lion is exactly. I know it's very critically acclaimed, but as for why it's maybe not as popular as it could be, I would put most of that on the fact that it's a discovery-based storytelling.
For sure.
It doesn't have a plot that is basically, oh, here you go, right? You have to fall in love with this kid that you want to see heal and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
That's not an outline.
For sure. And someone brought up something that's very interesting here. Perverted Old Man. I did come a little bit later to the stream. Did you mention the cons of an outline? We have not mentioned too much of the cons.
I mean, we kind of did. Because, okay.
Well, there's a... Yeah, go for it.
To sum up, it's like, okay, you've got an outline. The whole point is that it gives structure. It makes things a little bit more rigid. So you have something to work with, right? You have guidelines. But that can make it too rigid, because the characters are the story. The outline helps guide the story for the characters to live in, but you don't want the characters to suffer for it. You want to still use discovery-based storytelling to get from point A to point B to point C to point D all the way to Z, right?
Yeah. I forgot that you did mention that. That's right, yeah.
And so, that's the main potential cons of outlining. So with outlining, you don't want the audience to see the outline necessarily.
And you don't want it to ruin the character's ability to flex their muscles and be quality characters.
The best outlines are ones that you don't notice, right? Think like Moana or Tangled. Okay, let's say Tangled, because Disney totally does the outlines, right? And with some of them, it's a lot more obvious than others.
Yeah.
But with like Tangled, for instance, it's something of, okay, characters meet up, right? You establish all the characters, and there's a thing, and we're going to go to a place. All right, cool. We go to the place. There's a complication that is based around the characters and the motivations, and then we go to another place, right? Basically, and that's basically what it is. Not complicated at all as far as outline goes.
No.
But it's very well hidden. Moana's one is a bit more like, it's
obvious.
A bit bigger of an outline. It's a bit more obvious, but they still do a great job of hiding it. Right, and even though it's like this is the hero's journey story,
I am Moana of Matanu. You aboard my boat,
right?
Sail to the island of Tafiti.
Exactly, right down
to heart,
right down to the 3-act structure with the 3 versions of the song, and the final third version of the song. That version of the song is absolutely amazing. I love it so much, and I cheered when it happened. It is also at the same time textbook, like, hero's journey stuff, where the hero reaches their lowest point, and then they dig deep and they discover who they really are, and they make a decision about who they really are, and then they go to face the final evil, right? And then the whole resolution of that, again, very much an outlined thing that you could see coming. It's like, we've seen that before, but it worked really well, right? It was hidden.
So basically, the problem is that you may come with Deus Ex Machinas, or characters will act differently than normal because of a bad outline preparation.
Right, and that basically just comes down to being willing to rework your outline during the pre-stages. Like, one of the things I've always thought I just would love to absolutely do is go into like a Disney writer's room. Because that's what they'll do. They'll get a bunch of writers together, and they'll basically say, okay, what story are we going to make? How are we going to take that Disney outline, for instance, and make a great story out of it? And then they'll all come up with ideas, and they'll pitch ideas, and they'll, refine it and stuff, and work things out and take things out and add things in until they get that model where they're like, yes, this is good. And that part is very important, because especially when you're writing books, people, you will get better as you write this book, right? So with Battle Lines, the rewrites were pain.
I'll bet.
Because I had to almost holistically rewrite the entire thing whenever I did it, because it was so focused on the characters and why they were doing the things that they were doing. So don't be afraid to rework your outline, because it can save you so much time and effort and stuff. Because you will get better as you go. And An outline can become disjointed and hold back your story if you haven't established it for the right kind of story, in a sense. Events that muddle the themes and messages, or characters acting out of character for the plot to move where your outline for it to go. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. Outline is planned structure, basically. Mm-hmm. That is the simplest form of it. And I would say that most people that even do discovery-based storytelling on the majority of it still have some kind of planned structure. Mm-hmm. I would say it's an outline-based storytelling is more than just assembling a cast and, deciding on a set of conflicts. Uh-huh. It's actually like figuring out how they're going to be how they're going to be tied together.
Because as you make the characters, they're like, as the characters become defined, right, not just aspects like ideas of I can have a character
interview
that does
process,
this.
basically.
Right, the interview process. As you go through that, then suddenly you become a lot more condensed as far as what your options are, right? Mm-hmm. That's why a good outline is so tough, because you need to have the characters. You need to have characters that will go along with that outline. So discovering your characters and like just writing for the characters can be huge, so that you get to know who those characters are, and then you can make an outline. Like the first draft of Battle Lines, almost none of it made it into the final thing. What it really was, what it ended up doing for me was just helping me get to know the characters, right? And then for draft 2, I made an outline. I'm like, this is what I'm going to do, and then I went through it and I wrote it.
Yes, for AO, I know. I had a really good Ultimate Frisbee game, and I left really early in the morning, and I forgot to wear sunscreen, and I'm suffering for it right now. So I'm wearing a very loose, light t-shirt right now, and it's right around here, and it's on my shoulders right now. Yep. So I got burned pretty badly.
Your shoulders are burned bad.
Yeah, it's not too bad, but yeah. Oh, where does Made in Abyss land in terms of discovery outline scale, when we don't know basically anything what the end conflict is? Or do we? I would say actually the genius of A Made in Abyss is in the premise. That is the outline.
Right. Yeah.
The outline is we're going down.
Right, exactly. And that's the thing, because an outline can have just like the Abyss, you can have multiple layers of the outline, right?
Yes.
And Made in Abyss, also like say the movie, or not the movie, the game The Last of Us, I would say it's an example where you have the basic outline, right? You have the overarching, all right, we're going from here to there, right? That's the outline, right? And then it's, okay, we're going to have things that we do along the way, right?
layers. Onions have layers.
Yep.
Let's get that. Let's get it instead. Stories have layers. Yes, exactly.
Yep.
It's true though. Anytime you're dealing with a story where you want to, I would say, explore themes, characters, and some part of humanity, and have that be cohesive and throughout the entire narrative, you have to outline that in some way. It is very possible to be a genius writer that discovers the ways in which they will present that throughout the story, but still deciding what those themes are and then what kind of ways they'll want to present them, I would say, is generally outlined. And I would say Made in Abyss is probably one of those where you'll forget the outline a little bit because you'll think it ends at the premise, but the premise is actually what geniusly sets you up for basically any kind of mini outlined stories along the way through the layers into what could be an ending that they haven't outlined yet,
Well, and in a lot of ways, like the way Made in Abyss is set up, is it set up to, in a meta way, be a discovery based and a story about discovery, right? Yes. And it's just, we're going in this direction, so that's the outline. That's as far as it goes, and then maybe the author has like points that they want to hit along the way of, okay, I'm going to have this thing, I'm going to have this thing, I'm going to have this thing, but even then, if you think about it, like the two like big episodes in Made in Abyss. They weren't exactly like equidistantly spaced out in the show, right? It's like, okay, cool. We've got a whole ton of episodes of them just doing stuff, right? You know, them just going, discovering, right? And because of that, here's the thing. If they had started out and they had say, the first of the 2 episodes in the first 3 episodes of the show, would have had a very different effect. That's true. And if it was in like the first episode, it probably would have turned a whole lot of people off to the show. But it was because of all the stuff that happened before that, where we get attached to the world, we get attached to the characters, so that when things happen, right, that are those outline points, it hits us. It cuts deep, right?
For sure.
Oh, I have not actually played The Last of Us. I watched a like a cutscene like compilation. So yeah,
I haven't played it. Some shows will exclaim the basics of an outline loudly at the beginning as protagonist motivations. Yes, it's sometimes kind of annoying, but sometimes that is there to act as a red herring or subvert expectations, and it sometimes won't tell you much other than the start and end point, how I became the #1 hero, the answers must lie at the bottom of the abyss, and so on. It is something that breaks the immersion a little bit when you have to tell the audience what the beginning and end will be. But on some level, this is part of the things. Someone else asked a question here about outlines versus the execution. I think it was Ferreo here. So is the story outline more important than the actual in-depth execution, or can the details and specifics sometimes make up for a weak outline? And this is where there's truths in both sides, but there's certain parts of it that I prefer, and I think you are very similar in preference as well.
Of execution over concept.
Over concept and premise, yes.
However, I have a thumb drive on a ball chain necklace in my dresser that says that there are certain things where the concept, in tandem with a good execution, because you need to have good execution,
absolutely,
but sometimes there's a concept that has so much like to be milked from it, right, that it can carry an entire story. I'm talking about Doki Doki Literature Club.
Yes.
If you guys know Doki Doki and you know what that's all about, then you know what I'm talking about, right? That whole thing of, well, yeah, I'm not going to say more than that, but that is an amazing example where there was an idea, there was an outline. That very much is an outline, right?
Right.
It's not discovery based. I mean, you discover things, but and that is something. If they had just tried to do a discovery based version of that, I don't even know how that would have worked. It wouldn't have existed, right? But yeah, that's in my mind some of the top end potential of just how far a concept and an outline can take you, even if maybe there could have been things that they could have done better in that game. I don't know. I haven't like gone back and studied it much,
for sure. Same. I haven't either,
but that outline that they had was powerful.
There's a lot of good questions in here. Let's make sure we get a couple of them here. Do you think storytelling is binary, meaning it's either discovery based or outlined, or a combination of both? Can another way of telling a story exist that you're aware of? Absolutely, Daedra. It's primarily a combination of the two.
And can another way of storytelling exist? Absolutely. But the thing is that I would say with outline versus discovery based, they're two things that are basically just not even diametrically opposed, but it's basically just saying, where do you fall on a scale, right? How planned is it? 0, -10, +10. So it's in that sense, there maybe there is a third axis, and if so, I would love to hear about it. But in that sense, I would say if you were to look at that specifically, not that all stories should even be categorized this way, but in that sense, I would say it really is one or the other, but the two can be used in tandem. And that's when you break that rule and it goes in both directions, that's when you have a story that is absolutely amazing.
Remy's speaking about knowing the outcome before conflict. I feel sad whenever people say that people should skip the Black Swordsman arc. Berserk begins in media res for several reasons, which are important to appreciating the events of the eclipse. Beginning the story with the Black Swordsman arc hammers home the escapability of fate that comes up incessantly throughout Golden Age. We already know that Guts and Griffith are doomed, and because of that knowledge, we can spend the but
basically
I get the gist of what you're saying.
It's setting up the Greek tragedy aspect. It's setting up everything so that they know what kind of story they're getting into, so that when it happens, as
much as it hurts, as
much as it's kind of like, wait, what was that? It feels like it fits.
Games present a lot of other storytelling techniques as well, being an interactive medium, opening up a whole new can of worms for unveiling plot points in story.
Yes,
but with regards to the creation and the writing of said story,
because
it's either planned or it's not planned, or on a spectrum.
Right, and even if you have something where there's like options within a story, it's still something that they planned for, and then hence why in a case with D&D, it's something that can be so dynamic because you have the two happening at the same time.
Yeah,
and they're handled by different parties.
Right. In some level, that's probably one of the things that's beautiful about the separation between something like the writing in a D&D campaign, which is primarily handled by one person, and kind of the Disney stuff where things are done in a writer's room, or I would say actually a video game where, generally speaking, there's multiple people writing separate things of the story. So an example would be in a video game, I believe this is how a lot of video games are written, is you'll have basically chapters of many parts of the story that they'll just throw to a writer and be like, write this, please. I need you to make it compelling. Almost always that will be the most heavily outlined stuff, because they're basically saying, I'm going to take this package here, but I need to make sure it fits perfectly into the surrounding narrative here. It's basically how there's those perfect episodic TV episodes.
Right.
An example of this, those of you all I know that you watch my Witcher 3 stream, some of you, there's a specific quest line that many of you are very excited for me to get through, and that's the Baron quest line in Witcher 3. That specific quest line was hyper, I would say, outlined. There are specific things that are so well done, you will feel like you're discovering that part of the story there because of how the choices interact with each other. But thankfully, because it's a video game, it actually gives us an easier view into how it's outlined. Just almost by the nature of it being a video game, I would say you will very rarely find discovery-based video game stories on the overarching narrative.
Right. Yeah. It's almost impossible.
It's almost impossible. Yeah.
Again, hence D&D. Yeah.
D&D allows for, I would say, some of the most perfect blend of that, because the writer's room becomes you with the players.
Right. It's improv. Yeah.
It's improv. And Jacob and I have done some fun kind of comedic writer's room outline kind of meetings where we'll like jokingly make a whole story.
We've done that with you guys, on the podcast a while back.
That was doing the interview process for characters. Yeah.
And that can
it was super fun. Yeah.
Yep. But even then, when it would come to actually like making the story, like, I mean, maybe, depending on what kind of story you're going for, you can have it just be discovery based. But if you're wanting to make sure you have those high impact moments, like specific, measurable, I'm pointing to it right here in this episode at this time, that's usually almost always, I would say, something that happens because of outlines.
Oh, do games where the player dynamically create the story count? Define an example of that, because
other than D&D,
because still they're being given a list of parameters with choices regarding that.
If one were to hypothetically exist.
Okay.
Right. So if you were to basically take something that was just, say, D&D, right, but somehow worked into a video game, I don't know how that would work. You'd need like AI or something.
That will be a thing probably at some point.
At that point, you're basically just dealing with virtual reality, so.
Right. And then you would technically call it a story,
but it's
because all of life is a story.
Right, exactly. You're just living life, and that's the story.
But that is a cool hypothetical. I like thinking about hypotheticals with regards to storytelling. Certain hypotheticals I'm bored by. Antidoge, I know you're not too deep into it, but what do you think about your first reactions to Undertale? Undertale related questions probably aren't a good place for this here, but appreciate you asking the question though. Just making sure, going looking for things that are currently on topic. Ooh, Cycronia's got a writing project here. I'm currently doing this thing as a personal writing project where I jump between two protagonists who have diametrically opposite natures. And now that I hear you talk about it, I do end up writing one's adventure along a rigid outline while the other is very exploration based.
So the thing is,
cool.
You can do that and have it work still, because again, we've talked about Disney, right?
Yeah. Disney
has a set thing where it's a very straightforward, we're going to do A, B, and C, right? But they make it work because they sell the characters. They make it be whether it's that they make the outline fit the characters or they make the characters fit the outline way too early on for it to be noticeable.
Yeah.
Who's to say? But yeah, way to go on having it be two characters in particular, because that's a lot easier to do, especially if they're in different locations and stuff and kind of have different stories.
I've always wanted to do that type of story where you start them off in this kind of thing there. And while they can start off together and they're diametrically opposed in terms of some kind of aspect of their personality or what have you, I like the idea of kind of these two characters that are separated by time, location, fate, family, whatever, and then their story kind of like the environment and whatever their stories, their choices or whatever sort of pull them together. It's almost like a love story, but instead of it being a thing of where they join, it's where they keep kind of clapping in conflict with each other, but they keep having to keep having to be pulled back into that overarching overarching conflict.
Well, and also one other thing to think about and this is slightly tangential, but when from a narrative perspective, a lot of times I forget in what circles terminology is used, but when you have a scene and you have two characters that basically each want something and they end up getting that thing that they want from their scene partner, so I guess acting,
basically
that's considered a love scene,
right?
Not necessarily a romantic thing or anything like that, but just the idea that they both won, right?
Yes. Totally.
So if that gives you any insight and or the opposite of that gives you any insight for your story, then there you go.
Leah Shaw and Gremlin, thank you so much for the follows. Glad to have you here.
Any favorite examples of stories that you guys would say use outlines very effectively or ineffectively, potentially? Well, no, not ineffectively. There's too many examples of that.
There's too many examples of that.
But any stories that use them very effectively or just do a very good job of hiding it? Let us know.
Let us know.
Yeah.
Jad the Mad, actually, could we do a sort of interactive build a story podcast? The character creator one was super fun.
I mean, that does sound like it would be
It does sound like fun. We would have to make sure it's really simple, though. Because with the character creator one, we basically made it, again, a comedy-based kind of joke thing.
I think you could do it
but in a way that's simple
and not go too much into, like, have it be a separate thing from the character creator where it's not just, okay, let's make a bunch of characters that will end up going into the story.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's a really good possibility.
And by the way, I know a lot of people say write the characters first, but when like for me personally, having an idea for the overarching story that I want to do and then saying what kind of characters should be in this story or would exist in this story, that I found that also to be personally very helpful. So
for sure. Avatar: The Last Airbender. Yeah. I would say that Avatar: The Last Airbender had the outline kind of shoved in our heads in the same way that
you must defeat the Fire Lord before
you have to just learn how to master all the elements before the comet comes. But the thing is that they actually gave us that ultimatum type outline 6 or 7 episodes into the show. The beginning of the show, they basically spent the time necessary to discover the characters in the world. Right. So I'd say Avatar is a good example of using discovery-based storytelling when it's needed, but having an overall very structured
that like doesn't get in the way too much.
Yeah, it doesn't get in the way too much, but having it be like it's like the names of the seasons are called the element by which Aang is going to be learning in that time there. It's very meta.
Yeah, so A Silent Voice, that's another one that is a fantastic example of this because one, it's a manga first and an adaptation second. So the manga has a great outline, but a lot of it is very much discovery based. The overall outline that ended up being used from the movie is basically something that they kind of extracted and refined from the manga in order to make the movie what it is, right? And it's absolutely fantastic. If you haven't seen A Silent Voice, that is my favorite movie of all time. Am I biased? Yes, but they do a fantastic job with the outline because, again, they, not just the whole idea of like a 3-act structure and everything, but like with the way they set up, okay, here's this character, let's make you hate him. All right, now let's make you sympathize with them because you sympathize for this other character, but now you see how they were a terrible person and they generated all this conflict that's going to be the rest of the story. Now you want to see them be able to fix that. Okay, cool. Now that's going to be the journey of them trying to do that. We'll see how that goes, all that stuff. Some stuff happens at the end, and then, ta-da!
Right.
And that part the climax of the movie that is a very definitive climax. I mean, it's at like the very, very end of the movie. It basically just ends after that happens. The one with the tears. That is a prime example of something that was outlined. Now, you had all this discovery-based stuff that was happening in the middle and throughout it, right? That made it so that had impact. And it was contrasted by the very beginning of the story, which again, was another fantastic outlined bit. But even the beginning of the story, all the stuff that was happening, it's like, okay, cool. This is the premise for what we need to happen at this point in the story. Bunch of discovery-based stuff to make that happen and be hit as hard as it can. And then here's what we need to happen in this part, a bunch of discovery-based stuff to make that happen. Okay, cool. Now I've got this. Now we've set the stage for the resolution, because like the resolution in that movie is almost entire. Like, okay, there's some stuff that is concrete and tangible, but a lot of it is just an emotional realization on behalf of the main character.
Oh,
like
good point.
When you have stories like
Very
that,
good point. Yeah.
if like you're depending entirely on the characters, right, in that discovery-based aspect, but it can be supplemented so well by the structure of an outline so that you know when to do certain things and what not to do as well.
Definitely.
Yeah.
On Duck, thank you so much for the follow. Glad to have you here.
Thank you.
Guys, we're going to be wrapping things up in the next few minutes. Make sure to give us your questions now. I will be willing to answer general questions as well, but let's keep it as much on topic as possible. But if you're absolutely burning to, ask a question regarding something, slightly different, that's fine, as long as it's channel related or something like that.
When are we getting poll results?
Any examples of stories without basically any outline for the plot or otherwise? Well, I would say off the top of my head, not really many, but the thing I can generally say you would need to have for a story with primarily just the premise is you need some extreme first person exploration of a character study. It would need to be basically a form of a character study, I would say, for a story to have just the premise without a structured plot, because you just remove the plot as much as possible.
Right. That's basically just like an outline of an outline, where that's kind of what a premise is,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I would say gimmick that. But if you know of a story that's like that, let us know, because I can't think of too many off the top of my head. Most stories involve a good chunk of planning, but then when they actually go to write the plot and do the detail stuff, it's you'll find out whether it's actually based in the outline or the discovery-based stuff. Favorite outline movie? Well, Jacob's is A Silent Voice.
But that's just my favorite movie.
That's just his favorite movie.
Favorite specifically outline movie, I don't know, Kizu 2 comes to mind, but that's probably recency,
Yeah, recency bias would say Kizu 2 for me as well.
I don't know. And then after that, it'd probably just be like Disney movies,
Yeah.
Endgame.
What about it?
Endgame, I would say, is a fantastic outline movie. Here's the thing. Because with the amount that they were working with, it's a 3-hour movie. I won't go into any spoilers, but for a 3-hour movie with all the characters that they have, right? And all the previous things of this is a 22 movie culmination, everything, right?
Yeah.
The level of polish on that movie, even though there were certain things that I didn't necessarily like, the way they made it all work together, it was a bunch of tiny little cogs all working together in fantastic synchronization. That you don't get a story that is that smooth while being that big without serious outlining.
Yeah, definitely.
What do you think of the outline of Death Parade? Death Parade feels like a very outline of an outline, because the individual episodes apply to the overarching narrative and themes and everything, but I feel like it's not as direct as it could have been. It also could have gone more discovery based by leading with the characters in the episodic format a little bit more, and I'd say it'd be a bit more balanced of a story. But in some ways, you could feel a little bit of the outline restricting certain aspects of the writing. Right.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, because I don't I don't think that's like, it still continues. Like, it seemed like it was still going to continue after that.
Yeah, there's elements of both in that.
Yep.
But it's an interesting one.
I love the outlining of the second Blade Runner.
Yes.
Yeah, that one.
That is a really good movie.
That was really good.
I mean, Blade Runner movies in general are amazing, but the outlining of the second Blade Runner movie is very much you watch the ending of that movie and you just go, whoa.
Ooh,
I want to watch that again.
how much do you think Attack on Titan is outlined? So I would say that it's a great
Should I
example
shut my
where there's no,
Okay,
you're fine.
okay.
I would say it's a great example where there's a lot of outlining, but then there's a fair amount of discovery-based storytelling that happened in the manga, and that was a lot of more of the stuff that ended up getting cut out, because it was something where it's like, okay, I've got this big outline and it's great, and it's like cool. Oh, we're actually coming up towards. Wait, we're coming up towards the end of this outline. Hold on. You know,
Hold up a minute.
let me, add a branch here and make another outline here and blah, blah, blah.
Gotcha. And then it ended up ruining the pacing.
It ended up kind of damaging the pacing of what is now season 3.
Gotcha.
So the fact that they then basically took some of that extra content out. I mean, there were good character interactions that we also lost. But
And there were noticeable hollow points within the anime adaptation where I was like, well, they just jumped around quite a bit. And I mentioned that in the discussion as being like, hey, this is definitely where I missed something, right? And you're like, you missed a lot.
But overall, like the amount that was lost versus gained for the refining and consolidating of everything down, I think was fantastic. And that I would say is the biggest example of where you can really see the outline structure in Attack on Titan, is where it changed. Like where not like the outline changed, but like the structure of, all right, we're all going on outline right now. Oh, now we're discovery based for a bit. And we're deep in like complex intrigue plot stuff with, revolution and things. This is a problem.
And then they eventually go back to outline.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what I would say is something that's really, really impactful with that is that if you have a story that goes deep into the discovery stuff, you'll find that actually the written format is way easier to do discovery based stuff in there, because your investment in it is not limited to a certain type of presentation format of an episode. Ooh. So actually a TV show sometimes gets limited in its discovery based aspect of it, because it has to be in an episode or a season or or an arc, if you will. A book will sometimes be that's it. That's the outline, was the whole book. It wasn't the specific section of the book or what have you. So you can have a good lines. You can have a good segment of the story in the book go really heavy into discovery based stuff. Just because
Code Geass. Okay, that I would say is another great example where there was a switch. First season of Code Geass, super outlined, super compact, super dense. Everything fits into the overarching themes and everything and works really well and stuff. And then the ending of season 2, it's like, it's absolutely fantastic. It's like nigh flawless, right? But then like with a lot of the other stuff in season 2, it's like, you can sort of see where it's like, and then they went into some discovery-based storytelling here, and they're like, okay, we'll do this stuff here for a while, and then we'll, bring it back around and tie it in for the season 2 finale. Yeah,
it's essentially like, just a good boxer doesn't just use left jabs or right hooks. You throw in some combinations and mix things up. So.
And no, we will not discuss domestic girlfriend outline here because reasons, but I would say, again, that is another example where it starts with more a premise, right, that is kind of the outline of the outline.
Yeah. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for hanging out and being involved in the discussion and the talk about outlines, storytelling and stuff.
Yes.
Cool stuff.
Battle outlines, in fact.
Oh my gosh, yeah. But hope to see you in future streams. Please leave a follow if you want to stay up to date on all of those. We do a Berserk manga review stream on Tuesdays, all at the same time, 3 p.m. Pacific. We have a co-op sort of Undertale playthrough going on right now on Thursdays, which is kind of a fun little thing while Jacob and I go through that game and for the first time ever, both of us just completely blind. So that's
Yeah.
pretty fun. And also on Fridays, I do a solo playthrough of The Witcher 3. So yeah, check all that out, and hope to see you all in a future stream. But until then, we're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we'll see you all next time.
Outline is applied to Kill a Kill. I mean, very much outlined. Like,
Right.
you can tell with how in the earlier episodes they used episodes specifically to like introduce certain characters, one by one or things like that. And especially
Those
in the
first
second
3
half.
episodes.
Yeah. Oh yeah, in the first 3 episodes, like holy crap. Yeah.
But how does the outline affect battle lines as ending? In a really
Well, the
powerful
way that the Outline Affects Battle Lines is ending is when I go through the story, at